Beautiful May day, going to be a few good days, and I'm going to do something that I haven't managed to get around to before, surprisingly, which is to cycle the Gap of Dunloe and the Black Valley. Part of a longer trip. I'll be heading to Kenmare after that, but that's what we're doing right now, so let's have a look. So I'm starting here in the car park of Killarney train station. That's because where I actually started, but if you get the train to Killarney with your bicycle, then that's a place a lot of you might start. Otherwise, you could be somewhere else in the town. And then we're coming down through the centre of Killarney. There's a cycle track that's running along here, and that's going to turn off a little bit further down into the national park. By the way, we passed electric bike charging points just there a minute back. They're not actually active yet, but I filmed this in May 2025, so they probably will be. So you don't have to cycle the national road out of Killarney. However, it's not really signposted that this route exists, so if you don't know it, you might well miss it, hence the value of this channel perhaps. But basically there is a long cycleway that runs down the edge of the national park for, I think maybe it's 5 kilometers or so, so it's really worth doing it. We'll dip back into the national park later on towards the end of this day, but this route for the most part, it's not in the park, it's kind of skirting around the outside of it on the public roads that run outside and alongside it. It's worth spending time in the park itself. It was Ireland's first park. They started off in 1932. It's some of the woods here. Well, there's woodland in the area goes back 10,000 years. It's probably not true to say any of these woods have been undisturbed for 10,000 years. They were used a lot for charcoal, for instance, in the 18th century. But it's certainly a very long-running park with a number of unique habitats, including one of only 3 substantial areas of natural yew forestry in all of Europe. A number of old houses and, all that sort of thing. I find Killarney a bit of a strange town because it is so dominated by tourism in general and American tourism in particular. But, it has its own charm. So this stretch, we're coming out onto the national road here, and I was unfortunate enough to be cycling this at the very moment where the roadworks that are going to put in a cycle lane to the turnoff are being completed. So I had a particularly bad day. By the time you're cycling this to this turnoff, that should be a cycle lane all the way. And once you've turned off, you're basically on these relatively quiet country roads heading straight for the Gap of Dunloe. That's it, dead ahead of us here. Now, do be somewhat careful on this road because, again, it's a big tourist destination. They're heading for Kearney's Cottage at the start of the Gap. And so, again, you've probably lots of American tourists who've only been driving on our side of the road for the last couple of days. That said, no close encounters of any kind on this that were unpleasant. It was fine. That said, there has been at least one cyclist fatality on the roads in the Gap, which was back about a decade ago. A 70-year-old American woman who came off her bike on a very sharp bend, so do be careful out there. Setting out from Kearney's Cottage at the Gap of Dunloe, and going to do the Gap of Dunloe, the Black Valley, and Lord whatever his name's Cottage. So here's the route, and I'll tell you about it on the way. So I had that pint, so I'd be setting out at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and the reason for that was so that most of the tourist activity on the Gap would have ended for the day, including the jaunting cars. You can see a couple of those parked up to the left there. I don't think I ran into any on the Gap, but we'll see that from the video itself. As you'll see, there are a few people walking and there's 1 or 2 cars coming through it, but traffic is pretty light. Now, if you're here more towards noon on a summer's day, it can be very busy indeed. So I'd recommend cycling it either early in the morning or late at night. Not late at night, late in the evening, when the lighting is also much more attractive. The colours get a bit washed out if you're cycling it at around noon as well. So the Gap itself is, I think, 35,000 years old. It's basically formed when a big glacier in the Black Valley, which we'll cycle up to at the head of the Gap, breaks through between these 2 mountains, the Purple Mountains on the left, the McGillicuddy Reeks on the right, and ploughs this spectacular gorge basically between the two, forming the Gap of Dunloe, and it's the only route across these mountains for quite a distance on either side. So now climbing up the actual gap proper, which is quite steep actually. It's got me out of breath. Nice view back down. Fair few cars on the road, I think mostly tourists rather than locals, which is kind of a shame because I do prefer if people walk or cycle it, but yeah, not the end of the world. 3 or 4 past me. Great time of year with all the ash and the gorse out, and it's a surprisingly warm day for May. But as you cycle through, there are a total of 5 lakes in the gap, including both a black lake and then later on a black loch. The name Dunloe is thought to come from Dunloch, fortress of Lough. Now, Lough was the father of the 5 Firbolg kings who ruled Ireland around 3300 BC, according to the annals of the 4 masters, which is kind of a curious period or date because that's more or less the period in which Newgrange and some of the other major monuments were being built. Who knows? So here I've stopped at the head of the gap, which is the pass. It's about 240 metres, 241 I think exactly, and when we look over the top we're looking now into the Black Valley, or Cummanduff, which translates roughly as Black Glen. And this valley was pretty much the last place in Ireland to be electrified. In fact, only in the mid 1970s, I think 1976 exactly. It's very isolated basically because you've the McGillycuddy Reeks and Carrantoul, which is the highest mountain in Ireland, forming one side of the valley while it's in kind of a loop of it. So there aren't really any other ways in or out apart from this road over the Gap of Dunloe and the road we're going to cycle out, running through the Black Valley, and basically both of those roads look very much like what I'm cycling down at the moment. Narrow roads, what might be called single track in Scotland, and you can imagine in winter in particular this must be incredibly isolated. There's no shops, no pubs in the Black Valley, so you want to stock up on anything you might need before you go down. But there is one youth hostel, which we'll pass as we go down. I'll point it out once we do that. And I think there are a couple of bed and breakfasts where I'm coming down here and around this very tight bend. So off to the right here, there is a rougher road than the rest, which is a dead end. That's leading into the Black Valley itself. And what I'm going to do, in fact, on this cycle is I'm going to head up that road for a part of it. And then to the left is the road that continues out. So this intersection here, and that runs all the way to Moll's Gap. So here I'm going to nip down the road into the Black Valley. So this is the dead end. Okay. That's me going, oh, this is a dead end. As I should say, the other thing about the Black Valley is they mightn't have got electricity till 1976, but they still don't have mobile phone signals, at least for quite a lot of it. So in fact, I had come over the head of the gap there, come down and realised that my phone had stopped working, so my map tracking wasn't working, and I was trying to work out which way I was meant to turn there. But that's what was going on. Now, as you come down these dead end roads into the Black Valley itself, the road quality deteriorates quite sharply, in fact. So I didn't follow it through all the way to the end, which is probably about 2 kilometres beyond where I stopped. That, I think, has the look of a B&B to it, by the way. Instead, I basically just stopped once the road got rough enough that I figured there was no point heading down further. And then I headed back up. So basically, yeah, this is me coming down to the last bit. I wanted to get a couple of nice photos of the valley itself before I spun around. And it's proper rough gravel, basically, at this stage. I should imagine by the time you get over this little hill and down the far side, it's probably pretty brutal cycling altogether. I'm on 32mm tyres here, so they're fairly chunky tyres as it is. but even they were kind of struggling with this. But anyway, it is worth cycling down as far as you can make it for the views down into the valley yourself. And if you've got some sort of gravel bike or better suspension than I had, you might well decide to just keep going. So this is back on the intersection the other way. So this is, back on the intersection the other way, and this is the road that's going to eventually take us out of the valley up to Moll's Gap. I think that's about a distance of 11 kilometres or so. The entire circuit, if you do the loop that I'm doing, get to Moll's Gap and take a slightly different route, turn left at Moll's Gap and follow the national road back to Kenmare, that's about 40 kilometres. Here's the youth hostel. Let me saying hi to people as I cycle by there. And then as we come down through here, there is a turn on the left that we're going to take, and that's the turn that heads down towards what's his name's Cottage. I can never remember. I don't have much respect for nobility, so possibly I'm deliberately forgetting the name, but that's an old fishing lodge. Now that fishing lodge connects via the lakes back to Killarney itself, and as far as I know, but I bet this is pretty expensive, you can actually do a round trip where you get boats across the lakes to the lodge and you get picked up by one of those jaunting cars, horse and carriages, and then that takes you back up down through the Gap of Dunloe, back down to Kate Kearney's cottage. I have a suspicion, though, that trip would probably cost you more than the entire trip cost me. One of the ways I keep costs down is I wild camp at least some of the nights, and in fact tonight was going to be a wild camp partially because I was simply disorganised. Otherwise I might have booked into the Black Valley hostel back there. The one thing I would really emphasise is if this is what you're doing, I would really tell you to stick to a leave no trace. My opinion is that once you've packed up in the morning and you're gone, if somebody familiar with the area walks past half an hour later, then they shouldn't even be able to tell you'd been there at all. So for instance, not only do I not light fires in this sort of situation, it's quite dry at the moment, I don't even have a stove for heating up coffee in the morning. So I have what may be a good wild camping spot in the woods in Killarney, apart from one problem, which this net is reducing, which is midges. Just waking up from last night's camp. Nice location in woodland by a river. One downside is it's very still and warm at the moment, so plenty of midges around. So I'm packing up early to get a move on. So yeah, in particular, if you're camping on woodland or bog and there hasn't been a lot of recent rain, then no fires at all. It's surprisingly easy to start a fire that can then get out of control. And bog has the issue actually that the fire can go underground, so you can think you've successfully put a fire out, but it can be smouldering away underground and re-emerge a day or two later. And you really don't want to be responsible for that. But of course, the other reason I like to wild camp is precisely the what we're seeing and hearing this, which is basically you get to wake up in these stunning places very early in the morning before the rest of the tourists arrive, and you basically have them to yourself. And particularly in terms of birdsong, I find that's always quite spectacular. So here we're climbing up out of the Black Valley. There's quite a long climb up towards what's called Moll's Gap, and if you were doing a circuit of the Gap of Dunloe and the Black Valley back to Killarney, you would probably get to Moll's Gap and you'd turn left once you get up there and follow the national road back down. That's about a 50-kilometre circuit. It's quite popular with cyclists. Now the route I'm going to do today is going to be a little bit different, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, this is probably a good moment to remind you that when I'm doing these trips, I post live photographs and video to my Instagram account, which is also called eBike Touring Life. And I normally also nowadays put video shorts up on my TikTok as well, also called eBike Touring Life. So these YouTubes, they take me a while to edit and put together. whatever. Often they'll only turn up months after I've done the trip, but if you want to find out what I'm up to right now, give me a follow on Instagram and you'll get a very good idea. So this is this climb up to Moll's Gap. I'm going to just pull in here for a second and take a break before the top. I slept very badly last night. It feels like I didn't get any sleep whatsoever. My mind was just racing. That sometimes happens. So I'm currently just below the national road that runs between Kenmare and Killarney, and I'm considering my three options. One is to call a retreat and go back to Killarney, get a train back to Dublin, get some decent sleep. Another is to go with the full original plan, which is, I'm quite high here, as you can probably see, is to go down to Kenmare and then follow the road back up to the Eurovelo route and stick to that Eurovelo route very strictly from Kenmare on. The big advantage to that is it means I can get some food there and I can perhaps get a shop, but I really need to get water. I didn't bring enough water with me, which was kind of stupid. I just didn't think of it. Or the third option, but I'm very limited water for this, is to actually just stick on the Eurovelo route from here and cut 30 kilometres and the descent to Kenmare out of it. And I've been sitting here having a iced frappuccino, which I bought in Aldi yesterday, and debating my three options, and I don't know which one I'm going to take, so let's see. Check out the video archive for previous videos on the psychological challenge of staying on the road. So when I got up on the main road, I had Wi-Fi back, so I got onto booking.com and booked a hostel that's actually on the EV1 route at about the distance I want to cycle today. And I've even got my own room, so that's pretty good. So it's sticking with the original plan. I'm now on the road down to Kenmare, and good illustration again that when you're feeling really kind of hard done by or exhausted or whatever, always wait till the next morning and remember that you have the option of booking in somewhere, and that's what I've just done. As I talk about in those videos, particularly if you're wild camping, it's not unusual for your first or perhaps second night you to have the heebie-jeebies and not sleep very well. And that's always an interesting barrier because there's part of you wants to give up at that point. But every time I've managed to push through it so far, and I've found that to be really worthwhile. And so you can have a combination like this morning where I'm both a little bit stressed about that, but I'm also having a fantastic time cycling in this scenery. So this route I'm taking down to Kenmare is actually on a back road. It's not the national road. However, my next video is going to be covering the Eurovelo route, running from Kenmare down as far as Waterville, and that route comes up the national road. So if you want to see what that national road down to Kenmare looks like, just be sure to see the next video that will be coming up. I'm currently editing, well, I will be editing that. I'm hopefully will get it up this month of June. As those of you who have been following the channel know, I'm meant to be in the Pyrenees, meant to be heading today actually. But rather unfortunately, I have a heart diagnosis that forced me to cancel that trip, and that I'm going to have to stay in Dublin for a bit until I get a little bit of medical certainty, or at least more information about where exactly I stand with all of that. This road, it's very little traffic, a little bit rough in parts. There is one or two, I think possibly quilcher forests on it, so it could be another wild camping spot. And it's great descent down. Here on the main road, I briefly crossed the main road to have a look at this little pretty harbour. We're back up on the main road here. There is a turn to the right which is worth following because it brings you on back roads into Kenmare, which are much nicer and not so much traffic. Do have a look at the video description because I'll include a link to my route map on Cycle Travel. And if you've any comments or questions, post them as a comment. I'll respond to those. But often as well, other people who may be more familiar with this area than me will hopefully get in there and respond to you as well. So my reasons for popping down to Kenmare, as I said, was I needed to pick up water and food for the day. But the other reason was Kenmare has got a really good coffee shop with fantastic breakfast in it, called Tyson Gourmet, I think. Apologies for the dog barking in the background. So that was the other treat before I headed out on Eurovelo 1. So my next video in this sequence is going to be Eurovelo 1, Kenmare to Waterville. The main purpose of this trip was to follow that Eurovelo route, long distance European cycling route, all the way from Kenmare to Limerick, a distance of about 450 kilometres. So give the channel a follow to get those videos as I post them. And again, apologies for that yappy dog in the background.